Oilerslive podcast. Oilerslive podcast.
Now, get ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Well, hello, Oilers fans. It's Michael here with the probably my last live podcast until after the All-Star break, and probably not unlike the Oilers. I'm going to need the break as a fan. My guest tonight is Hart. He is the founder and creator of the wonderful website Puckpedia. He's here today to answer some questions, talk a little bit of Oilers hockey, and just happy to have him on. Welcome, Hart.
Hey, great to be back.
Yeah, thanks. This is, your third time now?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, good to have you. Wish it was under better circumstances for the Oilers. Here's what we're going to do tonight. I've got the phone lines open all day or all night. So if you want to call in, if anybody wants to call in, they can call in at any time. It's 587-907-5483. And you can talk to Hart and I about, say whatever you want. I mean, this is after all, an Oilers fan show, or if you still consider yourself a fan. Somebody tweeted earlier, that this is kind of like the Oilers fan support group tonight. So maybe you get that stuff out. A win would have been nice tonight against the worst team in the league. Let's start there. We'll talk about the game tonight. I don't want to spend too much time on the game. We've got a little bit of a surprise. We've got a clip of Jeremy Roenick just lambasting the Oilers, I believe, after the second period of the game today. So we're going to play that clip. Hart, what do you think? Should we start with that first?
Yeah, I think that JR has a lot to say that's relevant for us.
All right. Okay. So this is on NBC Sports today at the end of the second period. Everybody have a listen and let me know what you think.
You're awfully quiet over there. I'm just sitting here watching this game and I'm shaking my head and I'm boggled that this is a professional hockey league team. The Edmonton Oilers are so bad. They can't put two passes together. Their passing decisions, their positioning defensively, they look at all three zones. They look confused. They have no idea where they're going. They're throwing hope-for passes up the ice, hoping that they catch somebody in a rush where they can get an outnumbered situation. They might have good skaters, fast skaters, but their feet and their hands go so much faster than their brains. They have no idea what they're doing out there, and it shows so much. You have the Detroit Red Wings, God bless them, the worst team in the National Hockey League by points in 43, and they look like the Stanley Cup champions compared to this Edmonton Oilers team. I can understand why Connor McDavid is as frustrated as he is. He's the only guy that's working. He's the only guy that's doing something smart with the puck. If you'll just look at that Glenn Denning goal, you have a defenseman that just puts his head down and shoots the puck right into the middle of a defender and doesn't get back, and the same guy that blocks the shot on the defender scores the goals. If I'm Ken Hitchcock, I'm in that locker room screaming my head off, telling them to wake up. We talk about hockey IQ, and there's some players with great hockey IQ. This team might have, from 18 players, the lowest hockey IQ that I've seen in a long time. The way that they're playing this game, it's embarrassing. I can understand why they were boos for this team going off the ice after the second period. It's just awful to watch.
All right, let's get you caught up.
And there you have it. That's JR. I've got to turn the volume down a little bit here. If anybody wants to comment, let me know what the line levels are like. That would be great. I had to turn it way up there, so hopefully we're not blasting on your screen or over the radio. Yeah, I mean, you don't get much more scathing than that. Of course, JR is always one to kind of hold back on his comments. Uh, he was, he, everything, everything today is really kind of about, I think everybody but Connor right now, right? I mean, this is a team that for two periods tonight against the worst team in the league, coming off two of the most lackluster losses that we've seen, and they didn't have any urgency until the third. Your thoughts on the game, Hart?
It's just, I mean, this game is the exact same to me as the last two before it. Like, it's just further evidence of a team that is not good enough. The players are just not good enough, and the players that they have, they're not even getting 100% what they can contribute. You just, whether it's confidence or just they're being down or frustrated, but even, they're not. The roster that they have is really bad. It's probably a little bit better than they played the last couple of games, but it's just such a bad roster. I mean, Petrovic again, -2. I saw him that game in LA. I think was the game before he got hurt. He was -3. Like, it's scary watching him get walked around. Manning is kind of, watching guys get blown past him, and then the $4.5 million man Koskinen has 3 goals go right through him. It just looks like a team that's just kind of waiting for something to happen, which is usually what you see before a coach gets fired, but they've already done that. So I guess it's the GM they're waiting on. I don't know, but it's tough to watch. And you feel sorry for Connor McDavid because you could just see the frustration on his face. Like, that doesn't look very fun. I mean, anyone that's even played in a men's league team where you're just getting blown out every night, like, it's not fun to play hockey that way.
Yeah, there's no absolutely. You see the frustration. You can kind of sense a little bit of the frustration in his interviews. He's pretty guarded in his interviews, but I think it's coming out a little bit. Obviously, he's frustrated with the booze and all of that. But I think it weighs on a guy when you're losing like that. Best Oiler for the night that wasn't named Connor McDavid.
Oh, that wasn't named Connor.
Tough question. Actually, I know.
I didn't think Nurse was terrible. I thought what really stands out is just Nurse is such a better skater than pretty much everyone on the team other than Connor. Like, and Detroit, they were kind of sitting back, so you could see Nurse jump up through the middle of the ice and carry the puck up. So yeah, I noticed him get into the play and make some things happen. I don't know. I guess that again, he wasn't a minus. So that's good too.
Yeah. That I wasn't huge on Nurse tonight. I mean, that's a guy who. There's a lot of things I love about Nurse, but the one thing I don't like is, he skates the puck in and he skates it wide all the time, and he never gets a good shot. And, so often the play goes back the other way shortly thereafter. I would have to say, and this guy to me has been a bit of a highlight lately, Jujar Kara.
Yeah. Although he can't finish,
tonight.
But he definitely had some. You saw the hands and you saw what he can do. But he gets it. He kind of had like that little mini breakaway from the top of the circle in. Would have been nice to score there. But I wish I would have picked him because that was a good one. He definitely was noticeable.
@_Laney Boggs on Twitter says dry. He's our new backup goalie. That was a hell of a,
that was good. That was good.
Hell of a save. Yeah, he went 100 for the night. Maybe we can get him an extra 4.5 on his next contract. All right. Worst Oiler tonight.
Petrovic for me. It's just painful. I mean, you could see he's trying hard, working hard, but he just can't turn. It's like trying to watch, like one of those huge boats turn around. It's just so slow, and they're just blowing past him, and he's like whacking and hacking and trying to hold on, but he's just like, it's like a turnstile back there. It's hard to watch.
Yeah, Petrovic was bad. Him and Manning. Which
that's quite a pair.
is that'll probably be the topic for a lot of people is Chiarelli leaving. And that was the answer on this team, Manning and Petrovic. Go figure, right? That they, in a game against the bottom feeder in the league, and those two came out strong.
What's remarkable? Sorry to interrupt. What's remarkable? If you look at every single transaction he's done since, just before the season started, and how literally everyone failed except, I guess you could say, Koskinen was okay, and then Chiasson. But literally every other move, from like Yarabek to Spooner, even claiming Zykov off waivers, Manning, Petrovic. Like every little tweak and move he's made, it's bad.
So I have some thoughts on that, and we're going to get into that because, I think probably this is the last of the Chiarelli era for my podcast. I suspect if you haven't seen already, Ryan Rashog, and I retweeted it. He says it's my belief a change is imminent. At the GM position in Edmonton, it's no longer a matter of if, and I'm correcting him here, but when Peter Chiarelli is let go, I'd expect news shortly. I think he's probably quite accurate on that. You can't go. Of course, the Oilers now have some days in order to make an announcement, or at least make some changes. They can make the announcement early, and then and decide over the break, what their next steps are going to be. All right, let's put this game behind us. Painful as Oilers fans as it is to watch. You heard Roenick's clip. We'll maybe try to find a way to. Is there a way? I'll find a way to tweet that out later. Pretty scathing, of course. And then at Blunden82 says, how can I see the chat? For anybody that's watching on Twitter, what you need to do is go to my profile. That's at Oilerslive. Click on the video, and then you get into Periscope. And from Periscope, that's where all the interaction happens. People are able to chat. There's a chat window, keeps the video on. And also, if you want to call in, it's 587-907-5483. It sounds like Blunden figured it out. All right. Okay. Let's chat a couple of things that are on everybody's mind right now. And part of the reason why I invited you on today, if you guys haven't gone yet, go to puckpedia.com, and you're going to find Hart's website. It has salary cap or salary breakdowns. It's got pretty much everything. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show it now just on the screen. Hold on one second. So you can go to Puckpedia, and there you can find information about players, teams, even agents. There's a really kind of a neat. What would you call it? Kind of like a dashboard for agents. Tells you who's got how many contracts, who's under which agent, etc. And then there's also the Ask the Capologist feature, which is, if you have a question about cap and space and what goes on, you can submit your question there. And I wanted Hart on because I had a couple questions. And Hart also has turned out to be a really great source for any new contracts that come out. He broke the news on the 15-team no-trade clause for Koskinen yesterday. Can you maybe, first, before we get into it, can you break down the Koskinen contract? What's all involved in that one? Do you know? As much as you know, anyway.
Yeah, so it's a 3-year deal. First year is base salary of $5.2 million. Second year, $3.3 million base salary with a $500,000 signing bonus, and then the third year is a $4.5 million all salary. Typical to see that second year, which is the 2020-2021 year, that's where players typically have both a little bit of signing bonuses and a lower pay in that season because, as we all know, it's a potential lockout year. So not surprising to see that. When you look at contracts on the site on Puckpedia, the 2 potential lockout years are highlighted in red when you look at any players' contracts, which is 2021, when the players of the league can opt out, or if they don't opt out, it would be 22-23. So, when you look at Koskinen's contract, you can see that middle year highlighted red, and then it has a 15-team no trade list. So for the whole year, for the whole contract, all 3 years. So he can submit a 15-team list where he won't get traded to.
Now, how long before he really doesn't care where he gets traded?
Maybe tomorrow morning.
Yeah. No, I don't want to make this too negative about the Oilers. I'm still a fan, but it's hard to find anything positive about it. Okay, so $4.5 million. I reached out to you yesterday after we kind of heard the news. I think Friedman let it out first that they were talking $4.5 million over 3 years. Where does that put him roughly in the averages and for goaltenders in the league right now?
So credit you. You asked me this yesterday, so I pulled it up on. If you click players on the website, that's the player dashboard, and that's where you can filter and sort with a bunch of criteria. So I pull it up and I just filter for this season goalies that have played 25 plus games on the list. There was 26 goalies that made that list, so that's what we could roughly call a starter. The average was 4.6 million. There are 2 guys that kind of bring that number down: David Riddick in Calgary, who has a cap hit of 800,000, and Casey DeSmith in Pittsburgh, who this season has a cap hit of 675,000. Those kind of bring it down, but as a $4.6 million average for guys that you would say are the starters, just based on them playing 25 plus games. So obviously that shows that it's about average pay for it. So I think the criticism would be if this is an average NHL goaltender and that's proven that, then $4.5 million a year for 3 years is fine. I mean, you look at Talbot's last deal, or the deal that he's finishing was 3 years, 4.167, which was signed a couple years ago. So as the cap has gone up, that seems like basically the same deal. The argument would be, well, Koskinen hasn't even played 40 NHL games. He had a good stretch, and now he's had horrible numbers the last 10, 12 games. So is he an average NHL goalie, or is he not, or do we just not know yet, right? I think that's the bigger issue with it, is you're paying him as if he's proven to be an NHL average goalie, and I think that the jury is still out. He may very well be proven to be an average goalie or better, but it's just such a small sample size. The trend over the last 10, 12 games has been poor. So, why sign him now, and why pay him as if he's already an average NHL starter?
Yeah, and I mean he was average tonight. I'll say that he made a few brilliant saves, and then he let in a few that he definitely should not have let in. I mean, it's just that. It's clear with the signing that this is the Oilers. Well, I mean, they've chosen their direction. It just, to your point, is they've chosen it after a very small sample size. I at first when I heard it, the numbers seemed large. I looked at your site, got a kind of a clear view as to, where it was in terms of the contract. I think, despite the small sample size, we all know that Koskinen played in the KHL for quite a while. I think that an average salary for an average goalie. Goaltenders win in this league. I don't know if I guess the question that I have is what bugs me is maybe a bit on the timing, right? Not knowing for sure, do we have a guy that is going to take us to the next step? Because clearly we need pieces to go to the next step, and this this is our direction now. Okay, let's move on from Koskinen. One of the things that I want to know, when a team puts players like Ratty and Spooner on waivers, what does that mean? And of course, we saw Spooner playing today. What does that mean to the team?
Okay, so when you put a player on waivers, all the other teams have 24 hours to put a claim in, and at this time of the year, it goes in the reverse order of the standings. So basically, everyone gets a chance to claim him. In this case, nobody claimed him. That doesn't mean that they're automatically sent to the minors. That just gives them the option to send them to the minors. So once a player clears waivers, they can be sent down within 30 days without having to be on waivers again. So I think the reason why both those guys were put on waivers was with potentially Sekera coming back or maybe coming back, and then also with Klefbom maybe coming back. I think they wanted to see if they would clear waivers, and then that would just kind of gives them more options. We can talk a little bit more about what happens when Sekera comes back, but I think the point was to have them clear, so now if they want to send them down, they can send them down. Ratty, he has a cap hit of $800,000, so that means that if he were sent to the minors, his full cap hit would come off the Oilers cap. So Spooner, he has a $3.1 million cap hit. This season, the threshold for bearing a salary is $1.025 million. So that means that anyone that makes more than $1.025 million as a cap hit, if you send them to the minors, you only save up to $1.025. You don't save any more than that. So if he were to be sent down, they still have a cap hit of $2.1 million. So that's what it means.
Okay, and of course they're up until next year. If we look on the site, there's still another 1.6 in buyouts that they have, so it would be roughly 3.6, I guess, right? That they'd be just kind of lost cap room. Fair?
If Spooner was in the minors,
yeah.
Well, actually, so that 1.025, that's based on the league minimum salary. It's a formula involving the league minimum salary. Next year, the league minimum salary goes up from $650,000 this year to next year at $700,000. So with that $50,000 increase next year, the threshold for bearing is 1.075. So they actually, if Spooner was in the minors next year, they'd get an extra $50,000 of relief. But yeah, nothing significant.
Hey, when you're up against the cap like we are, 50,000 is pretty significant. So one last thing before we move on to chatting a little bit, and hopefully we get some calls in. Again, 587-907-5483. You can call in. Let's chat about Sekera. Obviously, what we've heard from Hitchcock is that Klefbom will be back after the break. I think that is expected. We've been hearing early February for Sekera, so I would say that's after the break as well. What happens when Sekera comes back? Because if I look at your site today, the Oilers are sitting in a negative cap position at $1.7 million. What does that mean, and what do the Oilers need to do, and what kind of penalties are we looking at?
Okay, so I will try not to put anyone to bed here or lose them. I'll maybe try to stay high level. So that's from LTIR, and so the way that LTIR, everyone knows Sekera went on LTIR. So when the player's on LTIR, you don't get like more salary cap room, which sort of some people think. You actually are allowed to exceed the cap by that amount. So if you look on the Oilers page right now, we're showing that they have an LTIR pool of just under $5.5 million. That's how much the Oilers could exceed the cap if Sekera is on LTIR. That number, again, I'll try to not get too detailed, but that number is basically the cap hit of the player that's on LTIR, which is Sekera's $5.5 million, less the cap space the team had when they put him on the LTIR. So when the season started, they made some transactions that got to within about $10,000 of the salary cap. So that's why their LTIR is $5.5 million less than $10,000. So while Sekera is on LTIR, that negative cap space you see on the site, that could go all the way up to that negative $5.49 million. That's how much they could be over the salary cap while he's on LTIR. So that's kind of the easy part. While he's away, it's simple. They can go that much over. Where it gets way more complicated is when he comes back, or if he comes back. I guess I should also say I'm a little skeptical still that he will come back. I know he's trying and it seems close, but those are two really serious injuries. So, let's wait and see if it actually happens. But if he were to come back, that's when things get more complicated. So they can still be over the cap at the end of the year for the entire season, meaning when you get to the very end of the season and you kind of do the math and finish up counting everything, they can be over the $79.5 million salary cap by the amount of that LTIR pool prorated for the time he was away. So let's just say he was on LTIR for 70% of the season, which is kind of right around the trade deadline. Then they could finish the season being over the cap by 70% of the 5.5. So they could be like at just over $83 million final cap hit for the season if he came back. So again, that part is kind of easy. Now, again, where it gets even more complicated, though, is once he's back, their roster each day can exceed the real salary cap because now they're out of LTIR. They can't use that pool anymore. That pool's kind of gone to them.
Yep. So
the number that you actually have to look at is if you are on the team page and you scroll down to the team cap summary, which is below the roster. There's a line there that says current roster annual cap hit, and what that is if you take the roster as it looks like at this moment, and then you see what everybody's full year cap hits are, that's the current roster annual cap hit. So it's saying if today's roster was in place for the whole year, what would that cap hit be? And that is what has to be back under the limit once he's back. So right now they're at just under 82 million. That number has to be 79.5. So they need to get down on that space. And again, so they need to clear that 2.5 million. And I think that's why Ratty and Spooner were put on waivers, because now they know that if they need to, they could send those guys down. That doesn't clear enough space because, as we talked about, you'd save Ratty's 800 and then Spooner's 1.025 savings. So that would clear 1.825. So they'd still be like 665,000 short. So they would have to make another move and then have a roster of like 22 players. So they could get there by like sending Gravel down or waiving Gravel or waiving Manning and sending them down. They would be fine, but then they'd have a roster of 22 players if everyone was healthy. So it is kind of tight. I honestly think that they're probably just the plan was that they'll just trade Talbot, and that will obviously free up a lot of space. And between trading Talbot or one of the players with a kind of decent sized contract and then sending Ratty and Spooner down, they would be fine. So did I lose you or anyone, or should I go back and kind of clarify any of that?
No, I actually that cleared up a couple things for me. For those that don't know, what happens if you're in a cap negative situation? Like, what's the penalty?
You can't be out of compliance with the cap. So they wouldn't let you make a transaction that could make you out of compliance. So like if they say Sekera is healthy and he's ready to come off LTIR, but they don't make corresponding moves to be in compliance, they either wouldn't let him off LTIR, but if he's healthy, he's technically supposed to be off it. So then they wouldn't let them play. It's not allowed. You cannot be out of cap compliance. There's no penalty or anything. That's why it's a hard cap system. You're just literally not allowed to be out of cap compliance.
Perfect. So that, if anybody's listening tonight in hopes that there might be hope, this is not the day to listen. The cap situation is quite gross for us. Obviously, changes need to be made. I'm a little bit skeptical, like you, whether Sekera will actually come back. But if he does, it's certainly going to cause some problems, and certainly the Ratty and Spooner waivers kind of indicated that maybe they might be preparing for Sekera to come back. Okay, so you had wanted to chat a little bit before we move on to where we go from here, which is I think what everybody, if you're listening today, probably you all want to talk about, which is what's the next step for the Oilers. I mean, we've kind of taken ourselves at least for the near term out of the playoff race, which is so sad. But then where do we go from here? But first, you had wanted to talk a little bit about the. There's a couple things too. I also wanted to ask you why is Lucic's, for those that don't know, why is Lucic's contract buyout proof?
Okay, so BioProof is like kind of a term that people use. Actually it's not buyout proof. It's just that a buyout isn't really that effective, and the reason why is that you can't buy out signing bonuses. So Lucic's contract has a large amount of signing bonuses. In the next 4 years after this, of his $19 million he's going to get paid, $11.5 million of it is signing bonuses. So when you do a buyout, the amount of the signing bonuses that stays on the cap no matter what. So you're really just buying out the salary component. So on any contract on Puckpedia, you can pick a year that you want to buy it out and click buy it out. So if you click that for Lucic's contract starting in 2019, you can see that there's really minimal savings, especially in 2020 and 2022. So, and that's because, again, so he's got $7.5 million of base salary left. A buyout, as most people know, is 2/3 of the remaining salary. So that's $5 million spread over twice the remaining terms. So there's 4 years left. So it'd be $7.5 million times 2/3, and then spread out over 8 years. So that's a really small amount. That's only $625,000 per year. But then you have to add that to the signing bonuses that he gets each year. And when you look at that, you can see in 29. So in next year, his cap hit would be 3.625. So you would say, and right now his cap at $6 million. So you'd save, $2.4 million of cap space. So that's not bad. But then the following year, because he has, he has still a large signing bonus. Now his cap hit is $5.625 million. So you're saving less than $400,000. So it's kind of like, what's the point? The next year you'd save just under $2 million, and then the fourth year you'd only save again under $400,000. So a buyout gives you a little bit of room in like kind of year 1 and year 3, and really does nothing for you in year 2 and 4. So that's why people say it's buyout proof. Now, in some cases, like how Lucic was looking, especially up until the last couple weeks, like no matter how much space you got, it was like you think it's better than playing him. People might say that. So I guess that's why there's really no such thing as actually being buyout proof. It's just the benefit of the buyout, isn't so big if you have a contract structured like this. When I look at contracts, a lot of contracts, I always think like buyouts should be really the last resort. To me, it makes so much more sense to try and retain half the salary and maybe use an asset and then move them on to somebody. Because if the Oilers retain $3 million of salary, so they'd have $3 million cap hit, which is freeing up $3 million of space. That's better than how it looks in the next 4 years, right? And then you also don't have to worry about the cap hit of the $600,000 for years 5 through 8. And I know that maybe there's, it'd be hard to move them, but if you found a team like that has lots of cap space, like an Arizona or one of those teams, maybe they don't even keep them for the 3.5 or for the $3 million. Maybe they retain a little bit of money and move them on to somebody else who would want them for $1.5 million or $2 million. So I always find like there's an opportunity for teams to be more creative and retain salary with some assets and maybe get another team involved to help with that. We saw that last trade deadline with Derek Brassard when Ottawa traded him through Vegas to Pittsburgh, and Vegas was only involved to retain a bit of the salary. So again, I would think if you're a creative GM and you want to free up some cap space, you put an asset with Lucic, you retain half. And yeah, it might be tough to give up an asset, but if you can be creative and maybe get another team involved, so there's a couple teams that one has them for maybe $1.5 million or $2 million, another team just takes on a $1 million, $1.5 million of cap hit and gets something. It shouldn't be too steep a price.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course everybody's got an idea as to where where they're going to go with that salary. If you do want to go on to Puckpedia, there is a buyout calculator on there that does those calculations for you. It's really quite slick. You can choose which year to buy it out in, and makes it quite easy. So we're going to go back to Koskinen's agent, because we were going to talk about that, and I moved on from that. But let's talk about the contract and Koskinen's agent before we move on to what's next for the Oilers.
Yeah, it was interesting timing and everything. So Koskinen's agent is Marcus Leto of Acme, and he had a really busy day. So Carolina had its way with the Oilers at night, and that was on Sunday night. And then Monday morning, so you'd think they were still in Edmonton, maybe in Calgary by then. Tero Vainen signed the big extension. Same agent, Marcus Leto. And then later that day, he signed the Koskinen extension in Edmonton. Another interesting connection with that agent is he also represents Jesse Puljujärvi. So you wonder, is there something that might happen there? He's negotiating Koskinen. Have they talked about a Puljujärvi contract extension? And he actually represents a couple other Oilers players. I'm just going to pull it up here. But he represents William Lagesson, who's an Oilers prospect. And yeah, he's an agent that has a lot of European clients. But there's definitely an Oilers connection. So there's Puljujärvi, and let's see here, Lagesson. Yeah, and he has Osterley, who used to be Oilers property. Yeah, so there's definitely a bit of a connection there. But yeah, it just was interesting to me. It was a busy day for him in Alberta, signing the two big contracts, and then also representing Puljujärvi. And if you look on the website, we have the agent leaderboard where we're ranking all the agents by their total cap hit and their total contract value. You can click on any player, see their agent, and then that's another way to look at an agent's page. And on those agent pages, you could see their whole client list. So that's where you could see the full list of Marcus Leto's clients.
Yeah, and I've actually brought that up. So I've got Marcus Leto up there, of course, also representing Tuukka Rask, another goalie, at $7 million annual contract value. Okay, so off of the cap stuff. Let's chat. We're not going to talk anymore about this game tonight, but we'll talk a little bit about now where the Oilers go from here. And here's where I want to start, because I've been thinking a lot about this. And, what I want to know, again, if you want to call in, you can call in tonight. It's 587-907-5483. I'm going to put the number back up on the screen. Would love to hear from you if you can call in. Here's my thoughts. And everybody's going to have their own opinion as to what's wrong with this organization, much of which we can attribute to really just, poor management decisions, poor trades, etc. Here's the thing: is 2 years ago, we make it to the playoffs. We have really a decent year. In that year, we've got both Sekera and we've got Clefbaum are both healthy and playing until, of course, Sekera gets hurt in the playoffs. We've got a team that year that, is exceeding expectations, but we've got defense that can move the puck. The following year, we go, Chiarelli makes some, questionable trades, we'll say, right? Lots has been made the last couple days with Spooner going on waivers about the Eberle trade, which, of course, Spooner's on that Eberle trade tree. And so, we make those moves, but Sekera is injured. Originally, what I thought was the whole reason for the Eberle trade was to open up cap space so that we could do something about Sekera's injury. And we never did. I mean, Chiarelli never made a move for a puck-moving D-man that the whole season. And coincidentally, bottom of the league. This year, we go into the offseason. There's a little bit of hope. We of course got Bouchard in the draft. It looked like maybe Bear might after the end of last season, might have matured a little bit to be playing, full time with the Oilers. And you knew Clefbaum, of course, was injured pretty much all of last season, and he'd be back. There was some hope, and then of course, we didn't start out too poorly, and we've had our ups and downs this year. When we've had our downs, Chiarelli's tinkering was all about forwards. And everybody's talking about secondary scoring. The way that I look at this team is we've had, and I'm not making excuses for the team because the team's got to be better, but we've not had good puck-moving defensemen since we made the playoffs. We had one, and we just sent him down down to the minors. I'm sure he'll be back, and that's Jones. Since Clefbaum, of course, was injured again. The thing is that you've got a guy like Connor McDavid, and I was thinking about this tonight. When you put Draisaitl on that line, he starts to, of course, produce at a higher rate. And the reason being is the only guy on the team when Clefbaum's out that can feed McDavid a pass while he's in full flight is maybe Draisaitl, right? And I don't think it's about Draisaitl at all, that he can't run his own line. What I'm starting to think is that you can't ask these guys, they're not good enough, as are probably a lot of NHLers, to carry the puck from their zone into the other zone without at least getting a good, puck-moving pass out of the zone. And this is an area that just has not been looked after. When, Chiarelli makes a move, right, to get rid of a couple guys, and he brings in Manning and Petrovic. Petrovic is not the answer for, to replace Sekera. So I've started to sort of think that this is not at all about the forwards on this team. We give shit to Spooner. We were upset with Strome. We're upset with Puljujarvi sometimes, and Oilers fans are passionate. They're upset with a whole bunch of different people. But at the end of the day, I think, and if anybody's played a game of hockey, you need that first pass out of the zone. And there's very few players in this league that, against the quality of defense that you're playing, that can take the puck on their own out of the zone. They need that pass. Man, I hate Calgary, right? I hate them. It's, as a fan, it's like I loathe the Flames. But if they're, they've got right now, they've got Brody, they've got Giordano, and they've got another guy. I've gone blank on this, but they've got guys that can move the puck out of the zone. And then you look at San Jose, who's doing well, right? Of course, we're not going to get a Carlson, but at the very least, we got to stop tinkering with the forwards, and our number one priority has to be to find some kind of defenseman that can move the puck. And this team, it just isn't there. Of course, now we're in a cap situation. I was never going to be that guy that wanted to fire Chiarelli, right? I wasn't that guy. But he made the Manning and he made the Petrovic moves, and he just seems so damn clueless that I think it's time. And then, we let him, the upper management let him do all those moves. So, they're just as clueless. And this is the first time where, on the Facebook chat, where I've got a Swede on there, and he's all over Carlson, just kind of making me laugh. Sorry. Anyway, my point is it's time to the rebuild doesn't need to start on the team. I actually think this forward group can get the job done. I'm actually not too negative on the forward group, and I really do think Draisaitl could carry his own line if he could get a pass out of the zone once in a while, right? So that's where I'm at with this team. I really think that right now, we've talked about defensive depth, but the only thing that they've done, they've not looked after that. You cannot tell me that Manning and Petrovic looks after defensive depth on this team. they're screaming for secondary scoring. I think that that starts in one place alone. It starts on the D, getting the puck out of the zone, and the Oilers just have not done that. And Roenick, and for those of you joining in late, Roenick absolutely was scathing on this team, and he brought up that fact, right? That guys are just shooting the puck, straight up out of the zone. There's no hockey IQ on that back end right now, and Clefbaum is great. He might sit, middle of the pack in terms of first-line defensemen in this league. We need at least one other guy that's middle of the pack. Anyway, you know what? I've ranted. What's your thought?
Well, I agree with everything you said. I think that you make a really good point. Management. So you look at the group. So there's been reports lately that, they don't trust Chiarelli to make decisions on his own. So there's a collaborative effort. You look at the people collaborating on making decisions. You've got Chiarelli. We know his track record. You've got Scott Housen, fired GM. You have Kevin Lowe, basically got pushed out as a GM, fired GM. Craig McCavish, basically pushed out, fired GM. So you have a collection of guys that weren't successful general managers all making decisions. So you just to be a fly on the wall in those conversations, that's what scares me, or just honestly makes me shake my head. So let's say Chiarelli is let go tonight or tomorrow morning. Who is going to take over? One of those fired GMs or Wayne Gretzky's brother, Keith Gretzky, who seems like he's doing an okay job at the draft, but can you honestly say that if he had a different last name, he'd be a contender to be a GM of a team right now? Or is he just continuing to build out his record and do a decent job in the draft for a while, right? So, the thought of what's going to happen next is, nothing could be worse, but it's also just scary. How about, here's an idea. How about do a complete thorough search for a general manager and hire someone up and coming and smart? That would be a really good idea, but is something that in the history of the Oilers franchise, they have never do that with Tambellini, because he was an up and comer with Vancouver, and you saw how that worked out. But basically, they've never gone and hired a good, smart person who has not already failed at the job or is completely unqualified for the job, right? Again, Kevin Lowe, McTavish, they both seem like very, very nice guys. They bleed for the Oilers, right? They've done everything they can for the Oilers. But what was their background and training to be a general manager in the National Hockey League, right? Kevin Lowe retired for 1 year, was I think assistant coach the next year, head coach the next year, and then general manager the year after that. Craig McTavish was a really good coach at NHL. And then he was vice president of hockey operations for half a season, and then general manager, right? How about hiring someone that's got a background that has worked his way up in an organization, is one of the smart assistant GMs out there, or even non-traditional, maybe he was an agent, or maybe he, a guy like Chayka in Arizona had an analytics company, just something that has absolutely no resume that would support them being an NHL GM other than who they know or where they played hockey. That would be a nice change, but I'm very skeptical that they'll do anything other than list one of those guys we mentioned, or maybe Keith Gretzky as a general manager. And then to your point about the defense, again, it's just the management. The Oilers defense, if you look at the lineup right now of NHL defensemen, the only two that Chiarelli inherited were Clefbaum and Nurse had been drafted. Every single other person he signed or acquired. And if you look at the skill set of them, they're all meant for 2007 hockey, right? They're not puck movers. Sekera is the only one, and now he's on one leg, basically. So Sekera, I think that was a decent signing, and he gave them some puck moving abilities, but now he's been out for 2 seasons. You look at Larson, solid defenseman, not a puck mover. Russell, not a great puck mover, defensive defenseman. Manning, Petrovic, nothing more to say. Benning, again, not a great passer. And Gravel, again, strong, solid, not a puck mover. You look at other NHL teams rosters, they have guys, maybe roughly half, maybe even now more, where they're quicker puck moving defensemen. And this roster just doesn't have any of those guys. No one that has any. None of these defensemen. You look at like when they try to run a second unit power play with defensemen, and there's really like no defensemen that have any business being on it. Like Caleb Jones again showed something, but on most teams, he'd be playing third pairing 13, 14 minutes a night and be a year or two away from being on a power play. And he's never put up like huge offensive numbers, even in juniors or the minors. Like solid, definitely worthy of being in the NHL, but not like a power play quarterback. But they have nobody that can be that guy. When they traded for Wideman, I thought, okay, well, finally, at least they got a guy that's got some offense. But after his injuries and stuff, like he couldn't really move out there either, right? So to me, that's I think you're right on. A big issue is the defense, and they can't get the pucks to the forwards, and that's because every single guy that this management group has acquired is not a puck-moving defenseman.
And it's it's criminal because they've had 2 years now to do it, right? Like they've had 2 years. I honestly, I would defend the Eberle trade for Strome if they'd done something with that extra cap space in terms of replacing Sekera at least short term, which was what I thought it was intended to do. But then they turned around and did nothing. And I just think, and I've said this before, I think that the problem with Chiarelli is not, he's fine. He's built up, a bit of a prospect pool, which is great. But what he has not done is, he just has not been able to negotiate or make a trade that's favorable to the Oilers. Right. And you know why guys leave here and are good? I mean, that proves my point on the secondary scoring part, right? Like Aberg was just a stopgap, right? Like that's fine. And he's, now he's been, moved around a little bit. So, a lot of people were on the Aberg thing, but you give a guy, as I said, some movement and he'll score a couple goals for you, right? And you got a guy like, if you had kept a guy like Aberg, you can bring him in and out of the lineup, right? Of course, he, had to clear waivers all the time, so he gets picked up. Strome goes, and he's capable of being someplace else where they've got the D that can help a guy like him be successful. Spooner had more points when he was with New York than when he came over. The defensemen are better. We just, Chiarelli, for whatever reason, just can't get it together. He can't negotiate a trade. Just like he has a hard time negotiating contracts, right? The more that I'm not even one of the negative folks on Lucic, right? I don't dislike Lucic. In fact, I think he has come back faster this year. I think a lot for that guy is about puck luck, right? He's had some chances most nights, but negotiating that particular contract. Right? Like, could you not have got a better deal?
I think what you've seen is just like every general manager makes mistakes. Like it's a hard job, right? But what you just see is just a complete inability to evaluate talent and use proper judgment, right? Like you just mentioned trades, contracts. The common denominator is he does like misunderstanding the value of a player relative to the rest of the league, right? So that's why overpaying in trades, like no other general manager would think you need to trade Taylor Hall to get Adam Larson, right? And overpaying on contracts because not understanding what this player should be worth on the open market. And again, even the best general managers make mistakes, right? Like people in Chicago have been all over Stan Bowman. He won all those Stanley Cups. Like he's made some really good moves. Yeah, he's made some bad ones too. They all make mistakes. But to have a track record that's almost like basically spotless of any times where he's used good judgment and properly evaluated a player is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is remarkable. Again, folks, we've got, you can phone in if you like. It's 587-907-5483. We're not going to stay on much longer. I know it's it's late. There's other opportunities to listen to people bitch and complain on 630 Ched or 1260 or wherever you want to go. There's people complaining all over Oilers land right now. What do you think the situation this team is in today? And I want to get it. If you do call in, this is a good chance to hear what you have to say. But Hart, what do you think? And also for those that are just tuning in, I've got as my guest today Hart. He is the founder and creator of Puckpedia. Puckpedia.com. So go there. You can get salary information. You can get all sorts of information. The name is a great name. Puckpedia makes sense. Check out the agent dashboard, which is kind of cool. And but anyway, so Hart, what's your thoughts? Like, is there still hope for this team?
Surprisingly, there actually is. Like, the hardest thing to do in the NHL is get elite talent, and they have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl. I would put Nuge in the between very good to high end player category. They have Klefbom, again, a very good defenseman. Nurse is pretty good. Like, they have some decent pieces. It is salvageable. There is hope, but with every poor decision that's made, the hole gets deeper and deeper to dig out of. And what it takes is a smart general manager to make like 10 smart, shrewd moves. Maybe another 3 that aren't as good but aren't catastrophic. It's going to take a bunch of moves. They can do it. There was a good article written by Jonathan Willis of The Athletic talking about a little bit about this. Like, again, the hardest part is to get the top talent, and they have that. It's the rest that's bad, and so many mistakes that they have to try and dig their way out of. But if you had a shrewd, smart, savvy person come in, they could make a few moves, and whether it's retaining some salary and making a trade, or burying the right guys in the minors, or moving the right B-level prospects for someone that can maybe help them a little bit sooner. There are some moves that can be made to surround the team with talent, but again, the job would have been much easier this summer than it's going to be, or like this last summer than it will be this coming summer, right? Like, they've now made so many more mistakes. Now they have to deal with the Spooner contract, the Manning contract. They lost a third-round pick for Petrovic. Now they have Koskinen's contract, right? It would have been a pretty difficult job if someone took over before the season. Now you've added all those other things that they have to deal with. But again, it's possible. It just needs to be someone smart. If you have someone else sort of similar or even just average kind of muddle through, then they're going to be, it actually might be worse. They'll be stuck in that middle, 8 to 11 range for years, and that's really hard to come out of. So they're just at that point where if they make some really shrewd moves to get out from some of these mistakes and add a couple of key pieces of talent, they could turn it around. But it could also, they could also go the other way, and it could get worse, or they could just be kind of stuck where they are, which when you have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, you shouldn't be like really happy to make the playoffs. You should be a cup contending team. And that's a really disappointing thing that's happened here.
Yeah. There's no doubt. I mean, it's, we should be, without a doubt, we should be at least contending year after year. I could have taken last year as a blip on the radar if we were contenders this year. I get it. Klefbom's out, and we would go for this little dive here, but the team's just not good enough, right? Like, nope. You can't even. It might have been a couple days ago. Maybe I'd say, Klefbom's out. We've got some excuses, but we lost to Detroit. I think probably the Condors could have come in and done a better job than we did tonight. And it's frustrating. And you're right. If a guy could come in and make the right moves, I think and as I say, I think we're a puck moving D-man out of contention. And I think also to go with that, right? Like if you have a guy, a really shrewd GM, and Joe Nanaimo is saying maybe Bowman's got a grandkid out there. He also mentioned Hextall. I think I think the other part of this has got to be, doing a full front office shuffle, right? Taking
yeah.
like this. The more I think about rebuild, I don't think about the team at all. I mean,
No.
in fact, when you've got Connor McDavid on your team, and some people may or may not agree with me, but you got Connor McDavid and Draisaitl on your team, and you've got up and comers like Bouchard and I think we still haven't seen the best of Nurse yet. I think we're gonna get to see more of him. And Nuge. I love Nuge. Like he's a hell of a player. I think this team has, and TSN had their, core under whatever, 24 or whatever it is, and we're still number one. It's mostly because of McDavid, but we're still number one. And when you've got that kind of a core group of players, you're one or two steps away from, going where you need to go. Remember, and it kind of feels a bit like the Pronger curse right now. But when we had Pronger and Pekka come in, nobody expected us to do as well as we did that year, but we were only one or two steps away from doing as well as we did. And again, goes back to having one hell of a D-man back there that can do whatever you need to do. So that's got to be the number one thing that the Oilers are looking at right now is, love or hate Hitchcock, love or hate, some of the players, you've got to make some changes now that are going to position us next year. I think that, I just think we're one or two steps away, and the right GM in place will do it. You look south of Edmonton and Calgary, and they're making those moves every year to kind of upgrade the defense, and now look where they're at. It drives me insane that Calgary.
I think you make a good point, like about the needing to rebuild the front office. Like